Hi there, it's holiday season. Christmas is right around the corner, and you know what that means for us woodworkers? It means it's time to get out in the workshop and make something Christmassy, make something for the holidays. I always enjoy doing that, whether it's gifts for family and friends or decor for the house. So I thought we'd make a Christmas tree. Now this is one of those projects that looks complicated, but it really isn't. It's just there's a lot of pieces to it. But the pieces are simple and they're fairly easy to cut out. And it just takes a little time and patience because of the number of pieces that you're going to be working with. When you get done though, you end up with something impressive that your family and your friends will go, wow, how'd you do that? And you'll be able to just smile, that secret smile. And, well, it's up to you whether or not you tell them your secrets. So let's get to work. I must confess to you that the drawings we have to work on for this project aren't as good as the ones we usually do, and that's my fault. I made these drawings instead of the guy that usually does them. And I couldn't make them as pretty, but nevertheless they'll give us the information we need. So let's take a look at what we've got. Basically this tree consists of a whole bunch of wood bars, I call them branches, that run through and are sitting on a piece of all thread, which is just a big long, think of a bolt, the thread part of a bolt, 3-4 feet long, okay? And it goes into a base, and then at the top we've got a star. Once we string all these pieces on here, we've got a nut to hold them on the bottom and the top. Now it shows here that we need a hole through the middle of each of these pieces. You see this symbol here, CL, and this one here, they're the same symbol. That means center line. So on the center line of the part this way and the center line of the part this way, we're going to make a hole that's 13/32 inch in diameter on all the pieces, okay? And what that's for is just a little bit bigger than 3/8 of an inch, so we got a little bit of clearance. We're going to have a total of 47 pieces. One of those pieces is 24 inches long. That's the bottom one. Everything else is shorter in 1/2 inch increments. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to cut long pieces and then cut them in short, well, not quite in half. Here, as I show on this drawing, these are all the piece layouts, okay? So the bottom piece is 24 inches long. Every other piece, we're going to cut pieces that are 24 and 5/8 inches long, and then cut them off. So like this one's at 23.5, which leaves us an inch. This is a 23, which leaves us an 1.5 inches. 22.5, which leaves us 2 inches. Now, the math doesn't add up. Why not? Because the blade thickness is 1/8 of an inch, and we end up cutting that 1/8 of an inch out. That's called the saw kerf. All right, so it totals up so that we'll have all 47 pieces we need out of actually, what do we got, 23 pieces plus the 1/24 inch piece, okay? Other than that, we're gonna need a star for the bottom, the base. Now, you don't have to go with a star. I decided I was gonna go with a star-shaped base. And a star for the tree topper, and then a circle here, that's gonna be the trunk. That's gonna be attached to the base and stick up, and that'll be the trunk of the tree, all right? And then as far as material, we look at our material list. Now all those pieces, we need, all those 23 pieces that we need and the one piece that's 24 inches long together will come out of 3 1x4x8s, all right? And then we need a 10x10 piece of 1.5 inch thick wood for the base, some 2-inch round for the trunk. Now I'm going to show you an easy way to get those 2-inch rounds. And the star for the top is just a little scrap piece, 4x4 inches, okay? So let's go ahead and get started and see how this tree goes together. There's a lot of pieces, but it's really not that hard to do. One thing that's worked out really great about the way I've got my workshop set up is that I've got my radial arm saw and my table saw right next to each other. So my table saw gives me a place to stage the material that I'm going to cut on the radial arm saw. And likewise, the radial arm saw gives me a place to stage material I'm going to cut on the table saw. So it just makes a nice little cutting center right here. I've prepared my saw blade for my table saw for cutting all these branches for this tree by sticking on a self-adhesive sanding disc. Now, a lot of people don't use this anymore. It's pretty much been replaced by the hook and loop or Velcro type. But I have a lot of these left over from before that came out, and I still use them. So I put a disc on either side. Now, if you don't have those, you can do the same thing using regular sanding paper and some spray-on adhesive. But the idea here is as the blade cuts the wood, it's also going to sand those edges and should leave me with a nice smooth edge that I don't have to run through the joiner or planer in order to have it ready to use. I had a choice here whether I could cut my 1x4s down to length first and then cut it into strips on the table saw, or cut it into strips on the table saw and then cut it down to length. Because of space limitations in my shop, I decided it made more sense to cut it off to length first on the radial arm saw and then rip them down to size on the table saw. So as I look at my plans here, I've got to cut all these pieces down to the right size, and I've done these in pairs. So I've got 23.5 and 1, 20 and 1.5, etc., all the way up to 12.5 and 12. So this is the dimension I've got to remember. I need to do a total of something like 23 of these, but I'll know when I get to the last one because I'll have that 12.5 and 12. And so it'll be almost evenly cut. So, and I'm doing this in 1/2 inch increments. So let me show you how I've set up my radial arm saw to make those cuts. What I've done to make cutting this easier is I've gone and taken my fence, and on a radial arm saw you have to replace the fence every once in a while, but you do the same thing with a miter saw, especially if you've got an extended fence. I've gone through and I've marked my fence every inch. I'm just drawing a line there. And since I'm taking each of these pieces, making 2 out of them, I can take the first one and line it up with 1 inch, make my cut. Now I've got the very top piece and next to the bottom piece, because the bottom piece is 24 inches. And then for the next one, I can go halfway between the 2 marks, because I've just marked every 1 inch. Now, here's something most people don't realize, is that your eye is more accurate than you think it is. You can look at something, say it's a 1/2 inch or 1 inch long, and you can divide it in half with your eye, and you'll be pretty darn close to being right on. So I don't need it marked every 1/2 inch. Now, if I was trying to do a 1/4 inch, trying to extrapolate a 1/4 out of that 1 inch gap, that'd be really hard. But a 1/2 is easy, and you can just keep cutting it that way just by trusting your eye. So let's go ahead and start making some cuts. So now that I've got all my pieces cut, I've gone ahead and laid them in order by size. I'm just going to line them all up here. Kind of got to do a little quality control here, make sure I didn't miss anything. There should be a 1/2 inch step consistently from one piece to the next. And as we look here, we come down and we hit right there and right here where it's 1 inch instead of 1/2 inch. So I made a mistake, obviously. And if I check that, I find that this piece is 6 inches long and this one's 7 inches long. I'm missing the 6.5, and I'll bet the other place it's missing is the corresponding piece. So I've gone ahead and cut another stick. It's a good thing I made too many of these because I ended up messing up a couple times. And messing up is part of the process. So we put that in there and we find that sure enough, I now have all my pieces. I've got my stair step going all the way up there. So now I'm ready to move on to the next step in the process. Now I've got all these cut. The next thing to do is drill a hole in the center because they all get connected together on that piece of all thread. So my pieces are 3/4 of an inch by an inch. And the measurement side I need to drill is, I got to measure on the 1 inch. So I'm drilling in the middle of this, not this. Now we got to be careful about that, okay? That stacking the pieces up that way is actually longer than my bench is, so I have to do this in 2 sections. I'm going to flip them all over on their side. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go about the lazy way of doing this. I've marked the bottom piece and the top piece for their center. And if I take the top piece and line it up with this piece of blue tape, this is just normal painter's tape, and the top piece, now I bring all the other pieces over to my guide piece. I know this is straight. This is just a piece of select pine 1x2 that I've had sitting in my material rack. I know it's straight, and so as long as my 2 pieces, my top and bottom, stay lined up, and I bring each of these over to just touch, what that has done for me is now all my pieces are centered on that line. You can see we got the same angle here that we have here. And looky there, I got a line down the middle of all of them without having to measure them all. Now, I don't know about you, but I like the lazy way. Now, I've got my line down the center in this direction, but what about this direction? For that, I'm going to use a little gauge like this. This thing's really handy. This is a center finder gauge, and you run your pencil down inside. Now, it is a little picky about the pencil size. My mechanical pencil works out really nicely here. And all I got to do is bracket the board so that both these round knobs are in contact with the board, and draw a line. Now, one of the things I like to do that very few woodworkers I know do is use an auto center punch. This means automatic center punch, which is a spring-loaded center punch. And this is really something that machinists use more than woodworkers. But I always like to find that crosshair and go ahead and make myself a dimple there for drilling. And what that does is that helps me get the drill exactly centered where I want to be. It's a little more secure way of doing things than just doing it visually. Now that I've got all my branch pieces measured, I'm ready to go ahead and start drilling holes in them. I've gone ahead and chucked up the appropriate drill bit in my press here. Now, if you don't have a drill press, you can do this by hand. I just like working with drill press because I make sure that my holes are perpendicular. And we just drill a bunch of holes. A lot of times when you drill holes through wood, especially softwoods like this pine, you end up with a little of this fuzz sticking up here, and that's just splinters that haven't really severed from the wood. You can get on the back side as well. There's a couple things you can do about it. One is you can just try and knock it off with your fingers, like cut it with your fingernail. Another is to use, this is a deburring tool. It's actually a machinist deburring tool for metal, but it works pretty good for taking that fuzz out of there. But probably the easiest thing is chuck a countersink up in your drill press and or your hand drill, and don't even bother making it go up and down. Just bring the wood up to it. So I told you I was going to show you an easy way to come up with the 2-inch circular piece for the trunk. And what I'm going to use is a hole saw. If you look at the hole saw, you see that the hole saw's wall thickness is 1/16 of an inch, okay? So if I take this hole saw, this is a 2-inch hole saw, and I run it through a piece of wood, I'm going to get a hole that's 2 inches. Well, this hole saw is 2 1/8 of an inch. And if we take that 2 1/8 of an inch, obviously the hole will be 2 1/8 of an inch, but we subtract that wall thickness and the plug that's left is going to be 2 inches. And that's what we're after. So I can drill through and get my 2-inch plug. Now I'm actually going to do 2 of these, and I'm going to glue them together. And I'm only going to drill halfway through from one side, or maybe about 2/3 of the way, flip it over and drill it from the other side. That just makes it easier to get my plug out of there once I've flipped it over. So there's my 2-inch circle. Now I can take those two, glue them together. Now once the glue sets, I'll take it over to the bandsaw and just clean up around the edges, and I've got the trunk for my tree. Now that I've pretty much got the branches out of the way, it's time to do the base, which includes the trunk and the tree topper. So I've got a piece of, this is about 10.5-inch square by 1.5-inch thick pine here, okay? And I'm gonna make my base out of this. Now, you can make your base any shape that you want, but I'm gonna go ahead and make a star. And I don't have a star pattern that big, so I need to create a star pattern. And it's actually very easy to draw a 5-pointed star. So I'm gonna start off with a compass. If you don't have a good compass, I recommend getting one. So I'm gonna just draw a circle. You can see I've got an X drawn already on this piece of wood. And that X just is there to show me where the center is. So I can set my compass in place. I'm trying to make this circle dark enough that you'll see it easily. Okay, so I've got my circle. Now, 5-point star, there's 360 degrees in a circle. That means 360 divided by 5 gives us 72 degrees, okay? So I can take a protractor and line it up along either of these lines. I'm just going to use this one because it's here. And here's my 0, and I can go 72 degrees, and that puts me right here, okay? And I can go another 72, that would be 144 degrees. Here's 140, 144. Okay? Now I could keep adding, but I can cheat and I can go the other way, so I don't have to do all that adding. I can do the same thing going the other direction from my same starting point right here. So 72 degrees, 60, 70, 72, and 144. Okay. Now if I measure this angle between here and here, I'll get 72 degrees as well. So now that I've got that, I can draw from the center out through each of those tick marks to my circle. There's one, okay? Okay, now, the only one of my original lines I need is this one. So here's my 5 points of my star. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay? Nothing else matters, those 5 points. And now it's just a matter of playing connect the dots. So we connect each of these points to the 2 points that are not next to it. So I don't want this to connect to here or here. I just want it to connect here and here. And there's my 5-pointed star. Now I just need to go over and cut it out on the bandsaw. So I've got my star cut out and my circle for my trunk. As you can see, I've clamped the two of them together here. I want to show you something here as I take these clamps off. First of all, I glued this together with cyanoacrylate adhesive, good old super glue. And the reason I did that was I wanted to make sure that I got a really good bond, and I needed to get it quickly. The other thing is I ran this drill bit on the inside here. There's this fits both the hole in here and the hole in here. I did that for alignment purposes. That's to make sure I get it exactly centered, okay? I'm gonna have to use a pair of pliers to pull that out, but it's not gonna damage the drill bit any. Now, the reason I made this so big is that my bars, or my branches, my longest branch is 24 inches. As you can see, that's well, a little more than a third that distance. I'm concerned about stability. If anything, it should have been maybe a little bit bigger. But that's why I went with the star and the points are sticking out so far, is that I'm trying to do that. Now I still have the star for the top of the tree to do, so I've got a little block of wood here. And in this case, I don't need to draw it because I can print out a pattern that's the appropriate size. Now, I just printed this off my computer. You can find clip art for this. There is a pattern in the plans for this. For most people, it'd be a little hard to cut out that plan, or print out and cut out that plan on their printer, and that's why I showed you how to draw for the big star. That's why I drew it out. Now, this may seem a little odd. Why in the world have I got this tab here? And all the rest of it, I've got the points. Okay, there's a real purpose for that. and that is before I go ahead and cut this out, I now know where the center of the star is here. This line didn't come out real clean, so I'm just going to clean that up. So I now know where the center line here is, and I'm going to drill a hole, and I hope to get it about this deep. All right, and what that's for is that hole is to go over the all thread that's going to hold this all together. So the tree top will be held on. Trying to drill that hole after I cut this out would be really, really hard. So I'm doing it before I cut it out. So I've marked it by making it part of my pattern. I've marked it, so I now know where that is. I can put this into my drill press vise. It'll sit level. I can get my hole in that far, and then I can go ahead and cut it out. Easiest way to cut off the all thread is with a right angle grinder, if you happen to have one. One of the things you got to realize when you're doing that is that these sparks are hot, so make sure you wear a face shield or at least some goggles to protect your eyes. Hearing protection is a good idea because this is noisy. This can be a dangerous operation if you're not careful. Now you're probably going to get a burr on the edge of that piece, and you're going to want to grind that off as best you can. Okay, so we've got all our pieces cut and we're ready to assemble this. And I've cut my all thread, I've cut all my wood, everything's ready to go. I'm going to use a drill to put this together, and I've got my drill set on a low speed, and the idea here is threading it through. It just saves me some work. I don't know about you, but I'm into saving work. So we're just going to thread this through. Okay, we can put our top nut on. And set the tree up in its stand. Need to tighten the nut up here, put a little tension on these pieces so that I can spread them out properly. Okay, so now I've got a little tension on there. And what I'm doing is I'm moving each layer so that it's right at the edge of the next one. Maybe you can see a little better if I turn it this way. It's a little hard to move them because of a combination of the weight of all the pieces and that I've got a little bit of tension on here. But I kind of need the tension because if it's not there, they don't stay in place. So as you can see, we're getting our spiral going. This takes a little while. It takes a little patience because it doesn't always cooperate. You might have two pieces that have just a bit of a bow in them, and so they don't line up properly, or they don't want to stay put next to each other. Now, as I get to the top here, I've got a few pieces that have holes, actually a little off center lengthwise. I must have made a mistake. And so I've got to adjust. Sometimes I got to turn them around to get them to center better. But that's your and my secret. Nobody else needs to know that, right? You know, every project I do, I find some mistake on. The test of a really good woodworker is how well they can save the day when they make a mistake. And now that it's all the way in there, we can tighten it up the rest of the way. Good and snug. So there we have it. There's our spiral tree. Oh, I forgot something. Got to put the star on top. So, nice decoration for my house or for your house. Like I said, it looks like a complicated project where it really isn't. The only thing is there's a lot of pieces to it, but they're not difficult pieces to make. And what you end up with is something that's going to impress people because they just don't know how you did it. Well, you know how you did it. I know how you did it, but they don't need to know that, right? So why not try making your own? You know, it'd be a great piece of additional decor for your home. Your family will get to enjoy it, and maybe you'll get to impress some friends too. So now it's your turn. Oh, and by the way, have a Merry Christmas.